Cade's tendrils quivered in horror as she realized where her damaged spacecraft had crash-landed. Earth, the infamous Deathworld that haunted Iridian nightmares. The alien botanist's chlorophyll-infused skin paled as she surveyed the wreckage of her ship, now embedded in the lush, dangerous flora of the Amazon rainforest. Thomas Murphy wiped sweat from his brow, pushing through the dense undergrowth. The human biologist had been cataloging rare plant species when a fireball streaked across the sky, crashing nearby. His curiosity piqued, he ventured towards the impact site, unprepared for the extraordinary discovery awaiting him. As Thomas approached the twisted metal of the alien craft, he spotted a form unlike anything he'd encountered in his years of field research. Cade lay unconscious, her plant-like body intertwined with the wreckage. Without hesitation, Thomas carefully extracted the alien visitor and carried her back to his research station. Hours later, Cade's eyes fluttered open, focusing on the strange creature looming over her. She recoiled, her leafy appendages rustling in alarm. Thomas raised his hands in a placating gesture, his voice soft as he introduced himself and explained where she was. Cade's initial panic gave way to a mixture of fascination and dread. She had crash-landed on the very planet her species used as a cautionary tale, a world teeming with aggressive fauna and perilous environments. As a botanist on a solo research mission, she never imagined she'd find herself stranded in such a hostile place. Thomas listened intently as Cade described her species' symbiotic relationship with their homeworld's ecosystem. His scientific curiosity ignited when she explained iridian reproduction, a process akin to pollination, where individuals release spores that combine to create offspring. The human biologist couldn't help but notice Cade's reaction when he mentioned Earth's reproductive methods. Her leaf-like features contorted in a mixture of intrigue and revulsion at the idea of physical mating. Thomas found himself both amused and oddly self-conscious as he elaborated on human biology. Recognizing the unique opportunity before him, Thomas proposed a deal. He would help Cade repair her ship if she allowed him to document her biology and culture. The Iridian hesitated, her alien eyes darting around the unfamiliar surroundings. With no other apparent options for returning home, she reluctantly agreed. As they began their collaboration, Cade's initial apprehension gave way to curiosity. She peppered Thomas with questions about human physiology and mating practices, her scientific mind overcoming her cultural taboos. Thomas, for his part, struggled to maintain his professional demeanor. Despite her alien nature, or perhaps because of it, he found Cade's otherworldly beauty increasingly distracting. Unknown to the unlikely pair, news of the alien crash landing had reached a clandestine government agency tasked with monitoring extraterrestrial activity. As Thomas and Cade worked to repair her ship, a team of agents was already en route to investigate and potentially capture the alien visitor. The harsh Earth environment began to take its toll on Cade's plant-based physiology. Thomas noticed her vibrant colors fading, her movements becoming sluggish. The urgency to repair the ship intensified as he realized Cade's survival hinged on their success. Their forced proximity led to long discussions about their respective species' approaches to life and reproduction. Cade's fascination with human biology grew, tempered by an instinctive revulsion at the idea of physical mating. Thomas found himself equally intrigued by Iridian biology, his scientific mind racing with the possibilities for research and discovery. As they worked tirelessly on the ship, Thomas made a surprising discovery. Certain Earth plants seemed to have a revitalizing effect on Cade, temporarily bolstering her health. This finding opened new avenues for their research and strengthened their growing bond, but it also complicated the urgency of their repair efforts. With progress on the ship's repairs advancing and their connection deepening, Thomas and Cade remained unaware of the approaching government team. The stage was set for a clash between scientific discovery, interspecies understanding, and the long arm of human authority, all against the backdrop of Earth's beautiful yet deadly rainforest. As the days passed, Thomas and Cade's efforts to repair the alien spacecraft intensified. Their progress, however, came to an abrupt halt when they returned to the crash site to salvage more components. Thomas watched as Cade's tendrils probed the twisted metal, her alien features contorting in dismay. "The gravitic pulse modulator is beyond repair," Kite announced, her voice a rustling whisper. Without it, the ship's propulsion system cannot function. Thomas's heart sank. He knew what this meant. Cade was stranded on Earth indefinitely. The realization caused great concern on both of them as they trudged back to the research station in silence. Their setback coincided with a noticeable decline in Cade's health. Her once vibrant chlorophyll-infused skin had dulled to a sickly yellow-green, and her movements became increasingly lethargic. Thomas's concern for the alien botanist grew with each passing hour. Driven by a mix of scientific curiosity and genuine worry, Thomas redoubled his efforts to find Earth plants that could sustain Cade. He spent long hours trekking through the dense rainforest, collecting samples and conducting experiments back at the station. One muggy afternoon, as Thomas pushed through a thicket of ferns, a flash of vivid color caught his eye. Nestled in the crook of a gnarled tree was an orchid unlike any he had ever seen. Its petals shimmered with an almost otherworldly iridescence. Carefully, he extracted the plant and rushed back to the station. Cade's leaf-like appendages trembled weakly as Thomas approached with his find. He gently pressed the orchid's stem against her skin, and to his amazement, Cade's color began to intensify almost immediately. "Thomas," Cade gasped, her alien eyes widening. "This plant, it's extraordinary. I can feel my strength returning." The discovery marked a turning point in their research. Thomas and Cade worked tirelessly to study the orchid and identify other plants with similar properties. As they cultivated these beneficial flora, Cade's health stabilized, allowing her to focus more on their scientific endeavors. During their long hours of work, Cade's curiosity about human biology grew increasingly pointed. One evening, as they were examining cell samples, she turned to Thomas with an intense gaze. "Thomas, I must know more about human mating practices," Cade said, her tendrils quivering with excitement. "How exactly does the physical act occur?" Thomas nearly dropped the petri dish he was holding. He felt heat rising to his cheeks as he stammered, "Well, you see, Cade, when two humans are attracted to each other..." He launched into a clinical explanation of human reproduction, complete with awkward hand gestures. Cade listened with rapt attention, interrupting occasionally with probing questions that made Thomas increasingly flustered. Their conversation was mercifully interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Elena Rodriguez. The botanist colleague of Thomas entered the research station, her eyes widening in shock as they fell upon Cade. "Thomas, what in the world?" Elena gasped, her gaze darting between the human biologist and the alien botanist. Thomas quickly made introductions, explaining the extraordinary circumstances that had brought Cade to Earth. Elena's initial shock gave way to scientific fascination as she absorbed the implications of Cade's presence. As Elena integrated into their work, Thomas couldn't help but notice the way she looked at Cade, with a mix of wonder and barely concealed excitement. He felt a twinge of something he couldn't quite identify, a feeling that intensified when Elena's hand lingered a bit too long on his arm as they worked side by side. The trio's research took an unexpected turn when they discovered that combining Cade's biological material with certain earth plants produced extraordinary results. The hybrid plants they created exhibited unprecedented growth rates and resilience. "This could revolutionize agriculture on Earth," Elena exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. As they delved deeper into this groundbreaking research, Cade's fascination with human biology evolved into something more. One evening, as they were reviewing their latest results, Cade turned to Thomas and Elena with an intense expression. "I have a proposal," Cade began, her alien features set in grit. "What if we were to attempt combining my plant-based DNA with human DNA? We could create a true hybrid being." The suggestion hung in the air, heavy with implications. Thomas and Elena exchanged shocked glances, the ethical ramifications of such an experiment immediately apparent. "Cade, that's a massive leap," Thomas said cautiously. "There are so many ethical considerations we'd need to address." Elena, however, leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity. "But think of the possibilities, Thomas. This could be the greatest scientific breakthrough in human history." As they debated the merits and dangers of Cade's proposal, none of them noticed the small blinking light on their communication equipment. Unknown to the absorbed scientists, A coded message had been intercepted, a message that would soon bring their secluded research to an abrupt and dangerous conclusion. Miles away, Agent James Harrison lowered his binoculars, his stern features set in fierce dedication. He turned to his team of operatives, each equipped with state-of-the-art containment gear. "We move at dawn," Harrison ordered. "Remember, our primary objective is to secure the alien entity with minimal collateral damage." As night fell over the Amazon rainforest, the research station buzzed with activity. Thomas, Kide, and Elena remained oblivious to the approaching threat, their minds consumed by the ethical, debate, and scientific possibilities that lay before them. The convergence of their breakthrough research, Cade's precarious health, and the imminent arrival of Harrison's team set the stage for a confrontation that would challenge their loyalties, push the boundaries of science, and potentially alter the course of human history. And potentially alter the course of human understanding of life itself. As dawn broke over the Amazon rainforest, the tranquility of the research station was shattered by the sudden appearance of Agent James Harrison and his team. Thomas, engrossed in his work with Kide and Elena, barely registered the faint rustle of leaves and snapping of twigs that heralded their arrival. It was Kide who first sensed the intrusion, her alien senses attuned to the subtle changes in the surrounding flora. "Thomas," she whispered urgently, her leafy appendages trembling. "Something approaches." Thomas glanced up from his microscope, confusion etched across his features. Before he could respond, Elena burst into the lab, her face pale with worry. "We've got company," she hissed, gesturing towards the perimeter cameras she had installed days earlier. The trio huddled around the monitor, watching in growing alarm as black-clad figures emerged from the dense foliage. Thomas's heart raced as he recognized the government insignias on their uniforms. "We need to move now," he said, his voice tight with tension. As Elena hurriedly gathered their most crucial research data, Thomas turned to Kide, his concern evident. The alien botanist's condition had deteriorated rapidly over the past few hours, her once vibrant skin now a sickly yellow-green. "Kide, I'm going to try something," Thomas said, his hands already reaching for the vials of hybrid plant DNA they had created. "It's risky, but it might be our only chance." Kide nodded weakly, her alien eyes filled with trust. Thomas worked swiftly, combining the hybrid DNA with a nutrient solution tailored to Kide's unique physiology. As he administered the experimental treatment, he silently prayed it would work. Outside, Agent Harrison surveyed the research station through his high-tech binoculars. "Team Alpha, move in from the north. Beta, take the south," he ordered into his comm unit. "Remember, we want the alien alive and all research data secured." Inside the lab, Thomas and Elena watched with breathless expectation as the treatment coursed through Cade's system. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then gradually, color began to return to Cade's leaf-like skin. "It's working," Elena breathed, relief evident in her voice. Suddenly, Cade gasped, her entire body shuddering. "Thomas," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "I can feel them. The plants. They're speaking to me." Before Thomas could question this development, the sound of breaking glass echoed through the station. "They're inside," Elena whispered, fear evident in her eyes. Cade's alien features set in concentration. Outside, the vegetation surrounding the research station began to move, twisting and growing at an impossible rate. Vines thickened and stretched, forming an impenetrable barrier around the building. Agent Harrison stumbled back as a massive root erupted from the ground at his feet. "Fall back!" he shouted, watching in disbelief as his team was forced to retreat from the suddenly hostile forest. Inside, Thomas and Elena worked feverishly to pack their essential equipment and data. "We can't stay here," Thomas said, his mind racing. "Once they regroup, they'll be back with heavier firepower." Elena nodded, her fingers flying over her tablet. "I've contacted Dr. Marcus Rice at the university. He's on his way with supplies and transport." As they prepared for their escape, Kate approached Thomas, her alien eyes intense. "Thomas," she began, her voice a mix of curiosity and something else. "I wish to understand more about human mating practices, not just intellectually, but through closer observation." Thomas felt heat rise to his cheeks, acutely aware of Elena's presence nearby. Kide, I'm not sure that's... His response was cut short by the distant sound of helicopter rotors. Dr. Rice had arrived, but so had Harrison's reinforcements. We need to move now, Elena interrupted, hefting a bag of equipment. As they rushed towards the waiting vehicles, Thomas created a diversion by releasing a cloud of pollen from their hybrid plants. The alien-infused particles filled the air, causing several of Harrison's agents to stumble and cough. In the ensuing chaos, Thomas, Elena, and Kide clambered into Rice's waiting vehicle. As they sped away into the depths of the Amazon, Thomas knew their journey was far from finished. The secrets they carried, both in their research and in Kide herself, had the potential to reshape humanity's understanding of life in the universe. Behind them, Agent Harrison watched their retreat, his fists tight in tenacity. He raised his comm unit to his lips. Base, this is Harrison. We're going to need everything you've got. This just became a full-scale operation. As the research team disappeared into the lush green expanse of the rainforest, the true magnitude of their discovery, and the lengths to which some would go to control it, was only beginning to unfold. The dense vegetation swallowed their vehicle, branches scraping against metal as they pushed deeper into the heart of the Amazon. Thomas glanced at Kide, her alien form slumped in the back seat. Despite the hybrid DNA treatment, she still looked weak. Elena sat beside her, monitoring her vitals on a handheld device. We need to stop, Dr. Rice announced, bringing the vehicle to a halt. The terrain's too rough. We'll have to continue on foot. They unloaded their essential equipment, strapping on backpacks filled with research materials and survival gear. As they stepped into the humid air, Kide suddenly straightened, her leaf-like appendages quivering. The plants, she whispered, her alien eyes widening. I can sense them more clearly now. They're guiding me. Thomas exchanged a look with Elena. Can you lead us to safety? Kide nodded, her tendrils extending towards the dense foliage. This way. They followed her through the undergrowth, the alien botanist effortlessly navigating the treacherous terrain. Hours passed as they trekked through the jungle, the air thick with the calls of unseen creatures. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the canopy, Dr. Rice called for a halt. Wait, he said, pushing aside a curtain of vines. Look at this. Before them stood a massive concrete structure, its walls covered in decades of overgrowth. The entrance was barely visible, a rusted metal door hanging off its hinges. What is this place? Elena asked, her voice hushed with awe. Dr. Rice's eyes gleamed with recognition. An old research facility, part of a secret international project to study Amazonian biodiversity. I thought it was just a rumor, but... Thomas stepped forward, pushing the door open with a grinding screech. It looks abandoned. We could use it as a temporary base. They entered cautiously, flashlights illuminating dust-covered equipment and long-abandoned workstations. As they explored deeper, they found laboratories still stocked with outdated but usable equipment. This is perfect, Elena exclaimed, already setting up their gear. We can continue our research here. As they settled in, Thomas couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He peered out a grimy window, half expecting to see Harrison and his team emerging from the jungle. But the forest remained still, hiding its secrets. Days passed as they worked tirelessly, analyzing the hybrid plant DNA and its potential applications. Kide's health improved steadily, her connection to Earth's flora growing stronger by the day. One evening, as Thomas pored over genetic sequencing data, Kide approached him, her alien features set in an expression of intense curiosity. Thomas, she began, her voice low, I've been observing you and Elena. The way you interact, the subtle changes in your physiology when you're near each other. I believe I'm beginning to understand human mating practices, but I wish to know more. Thomas felt heat rise to his cheeks. Kide, I'm not sure. I have a proposal, she interrupted, her tendrils quivering with excitement. An experiment to create a human-plant hybrid using my DNA and that of a human volunteer. The lab fell silent. Elena, who had been listening nearby, dropped her tablet with a clatter. Kide, Thomas started, his palms sweating. That's a massive step. The ethical implications alone. But think of the scientific possibilities, Dr. Rice interjected, his eyes gleaming. It could revolutionize our understanding of interspecies genetics. Elena shook her head vehemently. It's too dangerous. We have no idea what the consequences could be. As they debated, Thomas found himself torn. The scientist in him was fascinated by the potential, but the ethical implications were staggering. And yet, as he looked at Kaid, he felt a pull he couldn't explain. I'll do it, he heard himself say. I'll volunteer. Elena's face fell, a mix of shock and something else, hurt, flashing across her features. Thomas, you can't be serious. Before he could respond, a loud beep echoed through the lab. Dr. Rice rushed to a console they had reactivated earlier. It's the long-range communication array, he announced. It's picking up a signal. They gathered around the screen, watching as an alien language scrolled across it. Keed's eyes widened in recognition. It's Zorgon, she whispered, her voice tinged with fear. A warrior race from my sector of the galaxy. They must have intercepted our attempts to contact my homeworld. Thomas felt a chill run down his spine. What does it say? Keed's alien features hardened. They're coming, to eliminate any resistance to their planned invasion of Earth. The weight of this new threat settled over the group. They had escaped Harrison and his team, only to face an even greater danger. We need to prepare, Thomas said, his mind racing. Our hybrid plant research, it might be our only defense. As they scrambled to fortify their position and accelerate their research, Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The fate of Earth, their groundbreaking research, and the potential for a new form of life all hung in the balance. Outside, the Amazon rainforest teemed with life, unaware of the cosmic drama unfolding within its depths. And somewhere in that verdant expanse, Harrison and his team drew ever closer, driven by their own misguided mission. Thomas looked at Kaid, then at Elena, acutely aware of the tension between them. As the Zorgon threat loomed and Harrison closed in, he realized that the most immediate danger might be the choices they were about to make. Thomas exhaled slowly, his gaze shifting between Kaid and Elena. The weight of their situation pressed down on him, forcing a decision he'd been avoiding. We can't proceed with the hybrid experiment, he said, his voice firm despite the regret that tugged at him. Our survival has to come first. Kaid's alien features contorted in what Thomas now recognized as disappointment. But Thomas, this could be the key to my long-term survival on Earth, to our future together. Elena's eyes widened at Kaid's words, a flash of hurt crossing her face before she masked it with perseverance. Thomas is right, she said, her tone softer than he expected. We need to focus on immediate threats. Dr. Rice nodded, already moving towards the communication array. I'll start modifying the long-range transmitter. If we can contact Kaid's homeworld without alerting the Zorgons, we might stand a chance. As the team dispersed to their tasks, Thomas approached Kaid. I need your help, he said, meeting her alien gaze. Can you use your connection with the plants to create a defensive perimeter around the facility? Kaid's tendrils quivered, her earlier disappointment giving way to determination. I can do more than that, she replied. Outside, the air hummed with Kaid's concentration. Vines thickened and stretched, weaving themselves into dense walls. Leaves expanded, creating a canopy that obscured the facility from above. The surrounding vegetation seemed to pulse with life, responding to Kaid's will. Inside, Elena worked tirelessly, her hands steady as she mixed chemicals. This should stabilize you for now, she said, administering the treatment to Kaid. But we'll need a more permanent solution soon. As night fell, the facility buzzed with activity. Dr. Rice's voice cut through the tension. I've got something, a signal, but it's not from the Zorgons. They huddled around the console, watching as an unfamiliar language scrolled across the screen. Kaid's eyes widened. It's from my homeworld, she whispered. They've received our distress call. Before they could celebrate, a loud crash echoed through the facility. Thomas rushed to a window, his heart sinking as he saw figures moving through the underbrush. Harrison's team, he hissed. They've breached the outer defenses. Elena grabbed a bag of hastily assembled non-lethal weapons. We need to slow them down, she said, tossing a canister to Thomas. These should help. They moved swiftly through the facility's corridors, keyed close behind. As they reached the entrance, Thomas caught sight of Harrison, his face set in steadfast perseverance. "Now!" Thomas shouted, launching the canister. It exploded in a cloud of dense spores, disorienting the advancing agents. Kaid raised her arms, and the surrounding plants responded, vines snaking out to entangle the intruders. Harrison's voice cut through the chaos. "Stand down! We're not here to harm you. The hybrid technology, it's the key to Earth's defense." Thomas hesitated, his finger on the trigger of another canister. "What are you talking about?" "Think about it," Harrison called out, struggling against the vines. "Alien plant hybrids? It's the perfect biological weapon against invaders. We need your research to protect Earth." Before Thomas could respond, a low hum filled the air. They looked up to see a massive shape breaking through the clouds. The Zorgon ship, its cloaking device dropping as it prepared to land. "Inside now!" Thomas yelled, grabbing Elena's arm. They retreated into the facility, the plants sealing the entrance behind them. Dr. Rice met them in the main lab, his face pale. "We've got another problem," he said, leading them to a sealed door. "We found this earlier, but I didn't want to open it until we had no other choice." The door slid open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with cryogenic chambers. Each contained a perfectly preserved plant specimen, some from species long thought extinct. "This could change everything," Elena breathed, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. Thomas's mind raced. If we could combine these with Kaid's DNA... A loud explosion rocked the facility. Harrison's voice echoed through the corridors. "We're coming in! This is your last chance to cooperate." "Do it," Thomas said to Dr. Rice. "Revive one of the specimens. We need every advantage we can get." As Dr. Rice worked feverishly to activate a cryogenic chamber, Thomas and Elena prepared for Harrison's final push. Kaid stood in the center of the room, her eyes closed in concentration as she communicated with the plants throughout the facility. The chamber hissed open, releasing a cloud of icy vapor. A plant unlike anything Thomas had ever seen began to unfurl, its leaves shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence. Suddenly, the plant's growth accelerated, tendrils reaching out to touch the lab equipment. Where it made contact, the metal and plastic seemed to come alive, merging with the organic matter. "It's sentient," Kaid gasped, her alien eyes wide with wonder. "And it's bonding with the facility." The walls pulsed with new life, a network of plant matter spreading rapidly. Thomas watched in awe as the hybrid organism began to reshape the very structure of the building. Outside, Harrison and his team breached the inner defenses, only to find themselves facing a facility that had become a living, reactive entity. Vines snaked out, disarming agents and sealing off corridors. As the chaos unfolded, a new signal blared from the communication array. Dr. Rice's voice cut through the noise. "It's a message from Kaid's people. They're sending help." Thomas looked at Kaid, seeing the conflict in her alien features. Earth or her homeworld? The choice loomed before her, as real and pressing as the threats that converged on their position. The facility shuddered as the Zorgon ship touched down nearby. In the heart of the Amazon, surrounded by enemies on all sides, Thomas and his team prepared for a confrontation that would determine not just their fate, but potentially that of two worlds. Worlds. The facility trembled as the Zorgon ship's landing reverberated through the structure. Thomas felt the vibrations in his bones, a stark reminder of the alien threat that now stood at their doorstep. Suddenly, the walls around them pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly light. The newly awakened plant specimen from the cryogenic chamber had begun to spread rapidly, its iridescent tendrils weaving through the metallic structure of the facility. Thomas watched in awe as the plant matter merged with the lab equipment, creating a bizarre fusion of organic and inorganic materials. "It's alive," Elena breathed, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. She reached out to touch a nearby console, now partially engulfed by shimmering vegetation. Before Thomas could respond, a violent tremor shook the room. The plant's growth accelerated, walls twisting and reshaping as vegetation burst through seams and cracks. In a matter of seconds, A thick barrier of intertwined vines and leaves separated Thomas, Elena, and Keed from Dr. Rice and the rest of the team. "Dr. Rice," Thomas shouted, pounding on the newly formed wall. "Can you hear me?" A muffled voice came from the other side. "We're okay. The plant, it's creating a labyrinth. We'll try to make our way to the communication array." Thomas turned to Kaid, whose alien features were contorted in concentration. "Kaid, can you control it?" Keed's tendrils quivered as she focused. "Not entirely, but I can influence its growth. I'll try to create a path for us." As Keed communicated with the plant network, a narrow passage opened in the vegetation. Thomas took Elena's hand, and they followed Keed into the living maze that their facility had become. They navigated through twisting corridors of pulsing plant matter, the walls constantly shifting around them. Keed strained with each step, her connection to the plant network visibly taxing her strength. "Keed, you're looking pale," Elena said, concern evident in her voice. She reached into her pack and produced a vial of greenish liquid. "Here, take this. It should help stabilize you." Kaid gratefully accepted the treatment, her color improving slightly as Elena administered it. "Thank you," she said, her voice weak. "But I fear I won't be able to maintain this level of control for long." As they pressed on, distant shouts and the sound of machinery echoed through the facility. "Harrison," Thomas muttered. "He must be trying to break through." Their path suddenly opened into a larger chamber, and Thomas gasped at the sight before him. The room was filled with a haze of shimmering spores, dancing in the air like glittering dust. "Don't breathe it in," Kaid warned, but it was too late. Thomas felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. The world around him began to warp and distort. He saw Elena stumble, her eyes wide and unfocused. "What's happening?" Elena slurred, reaching out to steady herself against a wall that seemed to breathe beneath her touch. "The plant," Keed explained, her own movements steady amidst the chaos. "It's released hallucinogenic spores as a defense mechanism." Thomas struggled to focus, the room spinning around him. Through the haze of his altered perception, he saw vivid images flash before his eyes. Alien worlds, cosmic battles, and strange hybrid creatures that defied description. Keed's voice cut through the fog of his mind. "Thomas, Elena, you must focus. I'll guide you through this." With tremendous effort, Thomas forced his eyes to focus on Keed. Her alien form seemed to glow with an inner light, a beacon of clarity in the swirling chaos of his hallucinations. As they stumbled forward, guided by Kaid's steady hand, a thunderous crash echoed through the facility. The plant walls shuddered, and an acrid smell filled the air. "Defoliants!" Keed hissed, her tendrils curling in distress. "Harrison is using chemicals to break through the defenses." Thomas felt a moment of clarity pierce through his hallucinogenic haze. He turned to Kaid, an idea forming in his mind. "Keed, I need to connect with the plant network, like you do." Elena, still disoriented, reached out to stop him. "Thomas, no, it's too dangerous." But Keed held Elena back, understanding dawning in her alien eyes. "It might be our only chance," she said. Thomas pressed his hands against the nearest wall of vegetation. He felt a tingling sensation spread up his arms as the plant matter began to envelop him. Closing his eyes, he opened his mind, reaching out to the vast network of alien flora that now permeated the facility. A rush of sensation flooded his consciousness. Suddenly, he could feel every tendril, every leaf, every spore within the facility. He sensed Harrison's team, their destructive progress through the outer layers of defense. He felt the ominous presence of the Zorgans, their alien technology cutting through plant matter with terrifying efficiency. But the strain of maintaining this connection was immense. Thomas felt his mind beginning to fracture under the weight of so much information. Just as he thought he would lose himself entirely, he felt another presence join him in the network. Keed's consciousness merged with his own, her alien mind helping to stabilize the connection. Together, they directed the plant's defenses with precision, creating barriers to separate Harrison's team from the advancing Zorgons. Through their shared perception, Thomas and Keed watched as the facility transformed into a biomechanical fortress. Walls thickened and hardened, forming impenetrable barriers. Vines lashed out with poisonous thorns, driving back both human and alien intruders. Elena, having shaken off the worst effects of the spores, stared in amazement at Thomas and Kide. Their bodies were now partially merged with the plant network, tendrils of glowing vegetation weaving in and out of their flesh. "It's happening," she whispered, her scientific mind already racing to document what she was witnessing. The human-plant hybrid experiment, on a scale we never imagined. As Thomas and Kide maintained their fusion, directing the defense of the facility, Elena worked feverishly to record every detail of the process. In the distance, they could hear the frustrated shouts of Harrison's team and the ominous hum of Zorgon weapons. Through it all, Dr. Rice's voice crackled over a partially functioning intercom. "We've made contact with a Iridian research vessel. They're sending help, but it will take time." Thomas, his consciousness expanded beyond human limits, knew that time was the one thing they might not have. As the stalemate between Harrison, the Zorgons, and their hybrid fortress continued, he could feel the strain on both his human body and Kide's alien form. How long could they maintain this fusion? What would be the long-term consequences of this melding of human, alien, and plant consciousness? And what new challenges would the arrival of the Iridians bring to this already volatile situation? These questions hung in the air, unanswered, as the transformed facility stood as a testament to the unprecedented merging of species and technologies. The fate of not just their research, but potentially the entire planet, now rested on the delicate balance they had struck in this remote corner of the Amazon. The fate of not just their research, but potentially the entire planet, now rested on the delicate balance they had struck in this remote corner of the jungle. As Thomas and Kide's consciousnesses intertwined through the plant network, their shared perception expanded. The facility's transformation accelerated, walls thickening and hardening into an impenetrable biomechanical fortress. Vines lashed out with precision, driving back both human and alien intruders. Elena, her mind clearing from the spore-induced haze, watched in awe as Thomas and Kide's bodies merged further with the plant network. Glowing tendrils wove in and out of their flesh, creating a living conduit of information. "Incredible," she breathed, her scientific curiosity overriding her concern. She grabbed a nearby tablet and began furiously documenting the physiological changes. The hybrid consciousness is stabilizing. Their control over the plant defenses is becoming more precise. As if in response to her observation, a section of the wall near Dr. Rice's position parted, revealing a secure pathway. Rice's voice crackled over the intercom. "Thomas, Kide, can you hear me? I'm moving our research and equipment to a more defensible location." Through their shared consciousness, Thomas and Kide acknowledged Rice's message. They directed the plant network to create additional secure corridors, allowing the research team to consolidate their resources. Outside, Agent Harrison surveyed the transformed facility with a mixture of frustration and grudging admiration. "Conventional tactics won't work here," he muttered to his second-in-command. "We need a new approach." Harrison pulled out a compact control pad and activated a swarm of specialized drones. The tiny machines buzzed to life, their sensors probing the living fortress for weaknesses. "Sir," his assistant reported, "we're picking up unusual energy signatures. The Zorgons are using some kind of advanced weaponry." Harrison's teeth clenched. "Get me a secure line to command. We may need to consider more extreme measures." On the opposite side of the facility, Commander Vex of the Zorgon forces adjusted the settings on his energy cutter. The beam intensified, slowly burning through the thickest plant barriers. "Push forward," he ordered his troops. "We will cleanse this planet of the Iridian taint, at any expense." Inside the facility, Elena's monitoring equipment beeped urgently. She glanced at the readings and frowned. "Thomas, Kide, your vital signs are fluctuating. The prolonged connection is putting a significant strain on your systems." Through their shared perception, Thomas and Kide acknowledged Elena's warning. But separating now would leave them vulnerable to the encroaching threats. They pushed through the discomfort, focusing on maintaining the facility's defenses. As the merged consciousness directed the plant network, Thomas felt Kide's alien perspective seeping into his mind. Strange memories and emotions flooded his awareness. The vast emptiness of space, the the complex social structures of her species, the weight of responsibility she carried as an emissary to Earth. Kaid, in turn, found herself overwhelmed by the intensity of human emotions. She experienced flashes of Thomas's life, the thrill of scientific discovery, the warmth of companionship, the burning curiosity that drove him to explore the unknown. This deepening connection strengthened their bond, but also blurred the lines between their individual identities. Dr. Rice's voice cut through their shared consciousness. I've compiled our research data and modified the communication array. We can now send encrypted data bursts to secure off-site locations. As Rice worked to safeguard their discoveries, a new signal caught Elena's attention. We're picking up a large object entering the solar system, she reported, her eyes wide. It matches the signature of a Eurydian vessel. The news sent ripples of hope and apprehension through the facility. However, their momentary relief was short-lived. Alarms blared as Earth's space monitoring systems detected the approaching alien ship. This complicates things, Elena said, her fingers flying over the control panel. Global defense networks are going on high alert. We may have inadvertently triggered an international crisis. Inside the merged consciousness, Thomas and Kaid grappled with the escalating situation. Their prolonged connection had revealed a crucial discovery. The hybrid plant network possessed an extraordinary ability to rapidly adapt its genetic structure. Thomas's scientific mind raced with the possibilities. Through their shared perception, he conveyed his thoughts to Kaid. If they could harness this adaptive capability, they might be able to create a biological defense system capable of repelling both human and Zorgon forces. Moreover, it could potentially provide a way for Kaid to survive long-term on Earth. As they explored this new avenue, Elena made a breakthrough of her own. Analyzing the data from Thomas and Kaid's merged state, she identified a potential method to separate their consciousnesses without causing harm. However, the process was risky and would temporarily leave them vulnerable. Thomas, Kaid, Elena called out, her voice tense. I may have found a way to safely separate you, but it's not without risk. You'd be exposed during the process. Given the current situation, I'm not sure if it's the right move. The merged entity of Thomas and Kaid considered Elena's proposal. The strain of maintaining their connection was intensifying, yet their combined strength was the facility's best defense against the encroaching threats. Before they could reach a decision, a series of explosions rocked the outer layers of the plant barrier. Harrison's drones had identified weak points in the defense, and the Zorgons were capitalizing on the opportunity. Through the facility's sensors, Thomas and Kaid observed Harrison's forces moving into position for a coordinated assault. Simultaneously, they detected the Zorgons' energy weapons powering up for another barrage. The hybrid consciousness faced a critical decision. Maintain their merger to defend against the immediate threats, or separate to pursue individual courses of action that might offer a chance at long-term survival. As alarms blared and the plant network quivered under the assault, Thomas and Kaid stood at the crossroads of human and alien understanding. Their choice would not only determine their own fate, but potentially shape the future of human-alien relations. The facility trembled, layers of plant matter burning away under the relentless assault. Time was running out. Thomas and Kaid, their minds intertwined in an unprecedented fusion of human and alien consciousness, prepared to make a decision that would echo across two worlds. In that crucial moment, as the facility shook under the relentless assault, Thomas and Kaid made their decision. Their merged consciousness pulsed with shared understanding. They needed to separate. "Elena," Thomas called out, his voice strained from the effort of maintaining the connection. "Initiate the separation process." Elena nodded, her fingers flying over the control panel. "Initiating separation sequence now. Brace yourselves." The air crackled with energy as Thomas and Kaid's consciousnesses began to disentangle. The plant network surrounding them writhed and pulsed, mirroring the internal struggle of its hybrid controllers. Thomas gasped as his mind snapped back into his body. The sudden absence of Kaid's alien perspective left him reeling, his senses overwhelmed by the cacophony of alarms and explosions. Beside him, Kaid stumbled, her form flickering as she readjusted to her individual state. The network, she rasped, her alien eyes wide with concern. It's destabilizing. Elena's monitoring equipment blared urgent warnings. The separation caused a temporary weakness in the defense system. Harrison's team and the Zorgons are breaking through. As if on cue, a section of the plant wall nearest to them burst inward, showering the room with debris. Agent Harrison stepped through the breach, his tactical team fanning out behind him. Thomas moved quickly, his mind racing with newfound knowledge gleaned from his merger with the plant network. "Dr. Rice," he shouted over the commotion, "upload all our research data to the secure satellite network, now!" Rice nodded, his fingers already dancing across his terminal. "On it!" Thomas turned to Elena, his eyes blazing with purpose. "Elena, I need you to synthesize a new compound. Combine the adaptive properties of the hybrid plants with Keed's DNA. It might be our key to long-term survival." Elena's eyes widened with understanding. "Brilliant. I'll get started immediately." As Elena rushed to her workstation, Thomas stepped forward to confront Harrison. The agent's weapon was raised, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "Agent Harrison," Thomas began, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Before you do anything drastic, you need to understand what's really at stake here." Harrison's grip on his weapon tightened. "I have my orders, Dr. Reeves. This facility and everything in it is to be neutralized." Thomas shook his head. "Your orders are based on fear and misunderstanding. What we've discovered here isn't a threat. It's an opportunity for advancements in agriculture that could end world hunger, medical breakthroughs that could cure diseases we thought incurable." Harrison's purpose wavered visibly. "You expect me to believe that?" "I expect you to think for yourself," Thomas countered. "Look around you. Does this look like a weapon to you, or does it look like the future of scientific discovery?" As Harrison grappled with this new perspective, Kaid sprang into action. Her time merged with Thomas had given her insights into Earth biology she never possessed before. She focused her alien mind on the plant network, directing it to produce a powerful pheromone compound. The ventilation system hummed to life, dispersing the pheromone throughout the facility. On the far side of the complex, Commander Vex and his Zorgon warriors suddenly staggered, overwhelmed by the disorienting scent. "What is this trickery?" Vex snarled, his troops reeling around him. "Fall back! Regroup outside the human structure." As the Zorgon threat temporarily receded, a new complication arose. The facility's long-range sensors blared to life, detecting a massive object entering Earth's atmosphere. "The Iridian rescue ship," Keed breathed, a mixture of relief and apprehension in her voice. Elena's monitoring equipment crackled with incoming transmissions. "Global defense networks are going haywire," she reported. "The Iridian ship is visible to the general population. It's causing worldwide panic." But instead of an attack, the Iridian ship broadcast a message. It echoed through every communication device in the facility, spoken in perfect English. "People of Earth, we come in peace. We seek only to retrieve our lost scientist and mean you no harm. We extend an offer of friendship and cooperation to your world." The message repeated in language after language, blanketing the globe with its peaceful intent. In the sudden quiet that followed, Elena's voice cut through the stillness. "I've done it," she exclaimed, holding up a vial of shimmering liquid. "The adaptive compound for Kaid. It should allow her to survive indefinitely in Earth's environment." Keed took the vial, staring at it in wonder. With this, she could stay on Earth, continue her work, bridge the gap between their species. The magnitude of the choice before her was staggering. Thomas watched Kaid, understanding dawning in his eyes. He turned to Harrison, who had lowered his weapon, clearly conflicted. "Agent Harrison," Thomas said, his voice filled with conviction. "We stand at a crossroads, not just for this facility or our research, but for the future of human-alien relations. We have an opportunity here to forge a path of cooperation instead of conflict." Harrison holstered his weapon, his demeanor shifting from aggression to cautious interest. "What are you proposing, Dr. Reeves?" Thomas smiled, the first genuine smile since this ordeal began. "I'm proposing we transform this facility into an international, interspecies research center, a place where humans, Iridians, and yes, even Zorgons can work together to develop this hybrid plant technology for the benefit of all our worlds. Harrison considered this for a long moment, then nodded slowly. It's ambitious, risky, but potentially groundbreaking. He pulled out his communicator. I'll need to run this up the chain of command. As Harrison stepped aside to confer with his superiors, Keat approached Thomas. I've made my decision, she said, her alien features set with dedication. I want to stay on Earth, to see this through. Thomas felt a wave of emotion wash over him. Their shared consciousness experience had forged a bond between them that transcended species. I was hoping you'd say that, he replied softly. The facility, once a battleground, now hummed with possibility. As Thomas and Kide stood together, surrounded by the hybrid plants that symbolized their unprecedented partnership, the future stretched out before them. A future filled with challenges, certainly, but also with the promise of a new era of interstellar cooperation. Outside, the Iridian ship hovered, a testament to the vastness of the universe and the potential for connection across the stars. And in labs and government offices around the world, humans began to grapple with the reality of a universe far more complex and intertwined than they had ever imagined. The hybrid plants, resilient and adaptive, continued to grow and evolve, their very existence a bridge between worlds. As night fell on this momentous day, the facility stood as a beacon of hope, a place where the boundaries between species blurred and the possibilities of the cosmos began to unfold.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.